What has the potential to make a father abandon their child? Well, in our case, it was PEP 572, which made Guido van Rossum, the BDFL, benevolent dictator for life of Python, resign from that position. Well, what is this PEP? What does it propose? Why was it so controversial? And then we will be actually analyzing in detail the actual Walrus operator, which is the content of this video. Now, officially, the Walrus operator is called an assignment expression, but it was kind of nicknamed the Walrus operator because it looks like a walrus. First of all, I would like to show you Guido. This is Guido, and then this is a walrus. There you go. So now that that's out of the way, well, this assignment, well, this PEP proposes this. Well, let's just read the abstract. This proposes to create a new way to assign variables with an expression using an annotation name. Let me just zoom in. Name and then colon equals expression. Okay. Well, I mean, whatever that means. Let's check it out. So I have here in my disassemble folder, I have this walrus.py where we have some code. Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to show you what the walrus operator does. And this is in Python 3.8. This was, well, I guess Python 3.8 is from around 2018. So this is kind of an older feature now at this point. So it should be supported in most, well, should be in most code bases. But I haven't actually seen it, and then we'll discuss this why in quite some detail. And you know, the pros and cons, we'll be discussing them, of course. We will be discussing the drama because the drama actually has some very important meanings. And yeah, so what we can do in effect is, let's say I have this function one. Pardon my function naming, but whatever, you get the point. What we could do in it, let's say we have our variable x assigned to 5, then what we can do is if x is equal to 5, we return x, right? Okay, something like this. And then for our function 2, which we'll be using the walrus operator, instead what we could do directly is assign this to the walrus, well, use the walrus operator, and then just simply do this. These two are equivalent statements. Now, what the difference is, when you use a statement such as x equals 5, well, this just assigns the value 5 to variable x. When, on the other hand, when you do something like this, which has to be in brackets, these are not equivalent, and actually doing something like, just like, okay, so let's say I just did this, the interpreter would be complaining, or maybe the compiler even, because this is not valid Python, because they want to make sure that you don't use the walrus operator as an assignment because it's used for something else. The walrus operator pretty much does the assignment and then returns the value, right? So again, these two, you can trust me that they're equivalent. We can disassemble something a bit more simple. Let's say we have x equals 5, and then we want to, let's see, return x. Okay, something like this, right? Which is very simple, right? And then here we do the same thing, but with a walrus operator. Okay, obviously this makes no sense, but I want to show you that this is, well, this shows you the distinction, right? Because if here I did something like x equals 5, then this would not return, this will return none, right? Like this. If I just did this, this would not work as expected. Maybe it would even crash. If I do this, however, this works exactly as expected, and I'll prove it to you. Let's disassemble this, like so. Maybe just like this would be quicker. We disassemble it and then we run it. Python 3.8 walrus.py, and now we have these two instructions. These two, well, the disassembly, the bytecode for these two functions, right? The first one loads 5 as a constant. It stores 5 into x. Then it loads x onto the top of the stack, and it returns x, which will be 5, right? The walrus operator one does a load constant, so it loads 5 onto the stack. It duplicates the top of the stack. Then it stores one of the most top element from the stack into x, and then returns the x. So pretty much you can, for the second case, the stack becomes 5, then 5 again, and then in store fast, you delete this 5, which goes into X, and then you return this 5, okay? While in the second case, it loads 5, it deletes 5, and then it loads X, which is 5, and then deletes 5. Okay, so the order is slightly different in the two, and yeah, I mean, these are, so you can probably tell that these are very, very similar, even in bytecode level, right? These are extremely similar statements. Okay. Now, what was the drama with this operator? I mean, it seems like somewhat useful. I mean, I don't immediately see any use cases for it. Sure. Here's a use case, for example. Let's say we want to open a file in like kind of an old school way, obviously, and we have a while loop which reads each chunk from the file. If the chunk is not none, then we can do something here in this pass statement. If not, we break out. Okay, this is very kind of old school standard way of reading files in Python. I mean, there's better ways now, obviously, but what we could do instead is we could replace all of this, right, and even this assignment, just with a walrus operator, right? Because what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we assign this. So first we get this value, right, and then we assign it to chunk, and then we evaluate it. So we're saying if chunk. So for example, in this case, if chunk would return none, right, then this just doesn't run the body of the loop. Okay, so these are equivalent statements. Now the problem is, and this is what a lot of the Python core devs were talking about, is the fact that this is kind of, well, so first of all, they were referring to PEP20. PEP20 is a PEP which specifies kind of the philosophy behind Python design, right? And some of these rules are something like there should only be one way to do things, one obvious way, and this obviously adds a second way, right? And then it's other rules which mention how we should try to keep stuff simple, and in a way this is much more simple than this, even though this is much shorter. What they were claiming is that this moves complexity. It doesn't really hide it, right? It's removing vertical white space, right? It's removing vertical length, but it's not actually making the program kind of simpler. Okay, and obviously Guido was against this. Guido was in favor of this PEP, and in fact he signed it off. Now, before, the way it used to work is that Guido had to sign off every PEP, and then once it was signed off, it meant it would actually be released, right? Now that Guido, that's why he was a dictator, right? He would ultimately take the decision, and he took the decision to do it, and it was such a mess that he decided to resign. Okay, now let's try to time these. I mean, you can expect that it will be quite similar, right? So we can do something. We time it normal, let's say, and then we can do read. Okay, maybe we can read it like let's read it like multiple times. So let's say, because I think it's quite it's quite quick. And then let's do the same here. Walrus. I actually haven't tested this timing yet, by the way, so I'll be on the edge of my seat as well with you. Actually, so I made this file, random.txt, whoops, which has I don't know how many zeros that is, a lot of characters. So let's run it, walrus.py, and let's see, maybe this was too much. I don't know how long this would have taken. Whoops. Let me just do 10 loops, because I really don't know how much. Whoops. Okay. So as you can see, I mean, you can extrapolate that already from the bytecode. These are pretty much equivalent in runtime, right? And so the whole point of using the Walrus operator is not for efficiency. I mean, we could have inferred that from the bytecode, but it is mainly kind of a style of writing stuff. Now, I leave it up to you. I have personally not seen Walrus operators, I think, at all, maybe very, very occasionally. And in my opinion, I can see their use case maybe in something like this. Sure, I could see it. you know, there was an argument where people say, oh, this is unintuitive for beginners. But then Guido's response was, which I definitely agree with, is like beginners find, or maybe I'm not sure if it was Guido, but beginners find a lot of stuff confusing, and we can't, you know, we can't design a language for specifically for beginners, which I do agree with. I mean, this is not per se so confusing. It makes sense. It's somewhat less obvious to read because we're just simply not used to it. Another point is that you know, a lot of stuff is confusing at first. Classes are confusing and whatnot. Then once you get the hang of it, it becomes kind of a necessity, right? To write stuff in, well, a lot of times in object-oriented. I know a lot of people, for example, don't like object-oriented. So there will always be people that do like a proposal, that find it useful, people that don't. In my opinion, this is not that evil. I do stand with Guido on this one. It's not that evil. I don't think I would use it very often at all, if not ever, probably because I'll forget about it even though I made a video on it. I don't think there should have been that much drama. Obviously this Guido did not leave just because of this. I'm sure it was kind of like a cumulative thing of issues and of toxicity, which is unfortunately the nature of a lot of these environments where, you know, in open source especially, and there is a risk that stuff becomes toxic, and then you just have to get out of there. And I do respect Guido for actually just leaving, and yeah. So hope you did enjoy the video. Hope you learned something new. If you did, well, make sure to leave a like and share it and whatnot. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.